Descent of the Demon God. By Hanjo Wiolia. Chapter 174. TQC Code. Part 1. All the Yongchun and Blade 6 executives gathered in the conference room of the Yongchun group. However, at the top of it were Chen Youwen and Huang Heol, who were the heads of both sides. Huang Heol was holding a laser pointer in his hand, showing a specific location on the 3D map on the table. There are currently 38 estimated locations. After tracing them, we searched through 483 places, and the remaining places are those that are yet to be checked. Blade 6 had searched the outside of the gate whenever they had a chance after signing an agreement with the Ministry of National Defense and tried to get the locations for 10 long years. The search appeared to take a long time at first glance, but given it was done only when the gates were unlocked, it was astounding. Then it means that one of those 38 places is the MS Group's base. Unless they suddenly decide to move their place, I can guarantee that there is a 90% chance of us being right. Huang Heol said in a confident voice. It was reliable information. The reliability of the information was high as the time when the Blade 6 was under surveillance after the Prison Act wasn't too long. 38 places. Investigating those places alone will determine the base of MS Group. How do we help? Huang Heol answered Chen Youwen's question. There is no need to look for them. In any case, this is what we've been doing. We only require some minor assistance. Tell me. The right to explore outside the gate barrier. Except for the government and Yongchun Group, no one could head out. The agreement with Yongchun Group was permission to wander outside freely even without any gate warning. Ancestor. Chen Yujing reached out to Chen Youwen through telepathy. The alliance had formed because of the command of our ancestor, but we have been in a hostile relationship with them for 1,000 years. Wouldn't it be dangerous to just give them what they want? The right to move freely beyond the gate barrier was an authority any Murim warrior and clan would want, so Chen Yujing was wary of the Blade 6. Chen Youwen smiled. Good. I will contact the Minister of Defense and give you the rights. Ancestor. Chen Yujing was perplexed at how the man ignored his opinion. However, that wasn't all. However, if you go outside the barrier to search, you take people from our clan outside. Do you agree? I do. Huang Heol said that he was fine with it. If the authority was passed on without any condition, then it wouldn't be long before Blade 6 took over the power. Chen Youwen blocked that in advance. Good. We should be thankful for that. And there is one more. What do you mean? Huang Heol slowly showed a news article. It was the fake news about GM Song Ryong being involved in the Prison Act. Now, Blade 6 was having a hard time moving properly because of this case, and all their contracts were terminated. What about it? Senior, you know it wasn't me. GM Song Ryong said carefully to Chen Youwen. They were asked to clear up the public misunderstanding. At that, Chen Youwen smiled and said, Isn't that something you should do on your own? Huh? GM Song Ryong, who thought that the alliance would help in the matter, was flustered by Chen Youwen's answer. Currently, he wasn't indicted or anything, but the government was wary of him. If my charges are dropped, the scope of movement will. It happened before the alliance. That is your task. How? Chen Youwen pointed to the lord of the cult, Chen Wujing. Our current lord has been imprisoned for at least 27 years. That, too, was because he had been framed. GM Song Ryong was silent at it. He was a party involved in the case. He too had been one of the Murim warriors who was tasked to check the marks on the dead people. Be grateful that you aren't being forced to accept responsibility for it. GM Song Ryong and Huang Heol said nothing about it. Indeed. On the other hand, the members of the Yongchun group nodded their heads. In their hearts, They were all worried that Chen Yuan would concede because of the alliance, but that didn't seem to be the case. The alliance negotiations were all done. Ultimately, the details were decided by the chairman and the executives, and most of them were finalized by Chen Yuan and Huang Heol. From now on, it's a race against time. Blade 6 will do everything they can to find MS Group. And Yongchen Group decided to help the broken contracts of Blade 6 to their side. It was a temporary solution, but in the long term, Blade 6 would have to rely solely on Yongchen. Of course, Blade 6 will do everything to restore their honor. In the conference room after Blade 6 left, Bai Macfian handed over a phone to Chen Yuan. Teacher. Ark Young. It was Ark Young, the descendant of Ark Wui and Chen Yuan's disciple. He had been moved to Russian, thanks to Yi's ability. I heard what happened. I feel so embarrassed. Ark Young wanted to connect directly with Chen Yuan. However, he waited due to the all-out war that happened. Where did you say you are now? Near the city of Bratsk. Bratsk is a small town in Irkutsk Oblast, Russia. He wanted to enter the city, but Ark Young didn't have a passport and didn't know Russian, so he couldn't get through the wall. Teacher. I am sorry, but could you please send someone who can understand Russian and my passport here? It's impossible to wander outside the wall forever since the outside wall was full of toxic substances. It wasn't good to be exposed to such things for long, even if it was Ark Young. I know. Keep your smartphone on. They will come. I am sorry for all this. It isn't your fault. Don't worry. Thank you for saying that. I'll wait. Chen Yuan hung up the phone. He was planning to meet the descendants of the North Sea Ice Palace who had gone to the Alkan island of Lake Baikal in Russia. Looking at the executives, Chen Yuan said, I will go to Russia for a while, it won't take long so, Lord. Becky had called for him. What? Would you mind stepping back with the three of us for a moment? Chen Yuan was puzzled at it. The three were Mun Ranyong, Hu Bong and Becky. Chen Wu Jin, who noticed it, stood up and said, Ancestor, it seems like they have something to tell you. We will now take our leave. After he got up, the others followed him and left after they bowed. Even Yu So-wa, Im So-hai, and Shekina too went out. Then Becky said, Lord. I heard from Hu Bong and Great Elder that you know the reason why we were hibernating. Yes. They had a code divided into 3 parts, left behind by Chen Musong. It was the location of the time pack which was arranged for Chen Yuan to access and come back to his era according to the seer called Song Mu-chen. Lord. What Lord is doing is important, but I believe that finding that divine artifact as soon as possible is the right thing. Mun Ranyang too nodded at it. Becky is right. I too believe that, and with Becky, who was in the MS Group's hands, I think that the divine artifact might have fallen into their hands, so retrieving it in advance seemed to be the right thing to do right now. Oh. I think the same too, Lord. Please, you didn't think the same. Hu Bong's lips twitched at Becky's words. The trio thought the same. They thought retrieving it as soon as possible was the right thing to do. I see. Chen Yuan had been thinking about it as well ever since Becky regained his consciousness. If his guess was right, this divine artifact has to be a time pack. Phew. He sighed. The time machine can be used by one person only. From the perspective of his subordinates, they didn't mind dying for this, but Chen Yuan couldn't accept their sacrifice. Right. That needs to be brought back. Only then can he analyze it and produce it. However, since the time pack was a future thing, there was a high probability of the materials not being available and Nano being locked. Wei. Mun Ranyang, who has become a bit proficient in modern culture, put a touch-screen tablet on the table. I will draw my part. She sketched something on the white screen. A total of 36 triangles of various sizes were drawn. Huh? My wife's drawings are different from mine. Next, Hubong sketched his 36 combinations of rectangles and squares. The last was Becky. Becky had circles and 36 different triangles. TQC code. The TQC code, a cipher, was created around the year 2600. TQC code can be interpreted by forming a combination of triangle, quadrangle, and circle. It was a code that was completely impossible to interpret if one of the three people was missing. The descendant, Chun Musong, had taken measures to prevent the loss of the item. Can you interpret it, Nano? I will scan the TQC code. Chen Yowen's eyes trembled as the code was scanned. The scanned code was superimposed into one location in augmented reality and then turned into a complex barcode-like pattern. TQC code combination complete. Decrypt the password. It didn't take long to crack it. Not long after, the map of China was shown and numerous red lines were drawn on it, all converged at one point. Wing. The location was Hubei? It was at Hubei. It was a location far from Jinan City. While Chen Yowen was looking at it, it seemed like a mountain valley. However, there was a weird thing. If his memory was correct, the place was quite close to the coordinates that Huang Heil pointed to as MS Group Space. The distance was around 1 to 2 kilometers different. It felt like what he feared was becoming real. I need to hurry. If he had been there before then, maybe he had been there once. Have I been to that place? As he asked in his thoughts, Nano answered. Coordinates 31 degrees 23 minutes, 38.6 seconds north, 110 degrees 16 minutes, 23.8 seconds east. This is a place the user has been to before. What? So it's really a location Chen Yowen had been to? As he was puzzled, a video played in his eyes. This is the Dead Sword Valley. A long time ago, it was the place where his ancestor, Chun Ma, and Blade God had fought. It was the place where the mountain sank to the bottom and created the valley. It was hidden there. It was the most unexpected place. In any case, it was better if it was still there. Since it was a place Chen Yowen once visited, then he could use the spatial movement. Lord, do you understand it? Hubong asked. Chen Yowen looked at them and said, We are moving right now. A shower room full of hot steam. Swash. A naked woman drenched in warm water from the shower with her eyes closed. The woman was appreciating the jazz music as she moved her body to the flow of music. She liked ending her day like this. In front of the half-open shower booth was a Bluetooth speaker, a large towel, and a silver mask with a mark C. She was enjoying the music, but then she stopped humming. Grunt. A crack appeared in the wall to the left of the shower, and a strange thing happened. It felt like the wall parted and something appeared. The strange thing flinched. Kayak. Crack. Startled, she moved back forcefully, breaking the glass wall and falling. The man, who seemed like he was stuck in the wall, said with a frown, damn it. Lord. While I am in a wall. It was Hubong who was caught in the wall. The naked woman, who couldn't understand what was happening, slowly lifted her head and looked behind her as she felt something weird. Behind her was a woman with red hair and a man in a black suit and sharp eyes. This man? The naked woman couldn't hide her shock. Chen Yowen, who was looking at her expression, asked, You seem to know me. Chapter 175. TQC Code. Part 2. The naked woman was so beautiful that she would cause anyone to exclaim once they saw her, but Chen Yowen's expression didn't change one bit. Rather, she was the only person who was concerned about the situation, as she was on the ground using her long hair to cover her chest out of shame. Lord! Hu Bong, who was halfway stuck in a wall, called for Chen Yuan's help. At the sight, Becky shook his head and said, "Stop playing around and come out." Hee hee. Crack. Hu Bong chuckled and then broke the shower room wall as he came out. Hu Bong, who possessed enough agility to easily break through the steel, was just fooling around by acting stuck in the bricks of the walls. Chen Yuan looked around. He was definitely where the coordinates were pointing, but he never expected to appear in a shower room. The problem wasn't the location, but rather how TQC code was hidden. That? Chen Yuan's eyes were gleaming as he held out his hand to pull in the mask next to the Bluetooth speaker. The letter C was engraved on the surface of the mask. Ha! Chen Yuan felt thrilled, as this was just what he was hoping for. You seem to be one of the 10. Hearing Chen Yuan's words, her face turned red as she no longer had anything to hide. He knows who I am? Her true identity was C, one of the 10 executives. Unlike the other executives who were replaceable, she was a key executive. Chen Musong. And in a few seconds, she managed to recognize the man's identity. She had never dreamed that he would ever come into her hidden base. You people seem to be using this place as a base. Chen Yuan was feeling nervous. The presence of one of MS Group's executives meant that the whereabouts of the item left behind by his descendant could be compromised. Lord Chen Ma. MN Ranyang's voice was full of worry, and Chen Yuan looked at the C, who was on the ground. It seemed they all wanted to interrogate her to know exactly when MS Group began to settle at this location and if they had touched Chen Musong's item. Woman, it was then. Quang. Quang. The sound of something shattering with strong vibrations resonated throughout the building. When everyone looked toward the direction of the sound, the wall shattered and something flew at a great speed. Where does it think it's coming to? Hu Bong quickly tried to block the foreign projectile with his sword. Clank. What? Pack. Quang. Hu Bong's sword broke, causing his body to bounce back as it broke through a wall. Hua Quang. How dare you? Mun Ranyang, enraged at what she had just witnessed, hurried to move her husband away from any danger and unfolded a defense technique. Papak. Mun Ranyang's eyes fluttered at the opponent, who didn't seem to budge, despite her using the best defense technique of her clan. She wondered if some monster had appeared, but surprisingly a woman with unique colored clothes emerged. Third guest. C's expression had brightened once she saw the woman. On the other hand, Mun Ranyang's expression darkened. What is this feeling? The feeling wasn't her internal energy being blocked, but rather that of hitting a solid rock. Most people would suffer from internal injuries if they didn't have an equal understanding of internal energy, but the defense technique didn't seem to be working against this woman. I was curious about what kind of rats came, but I see it was just you. The woman in unique colored clothes, called the third guest, tried to swing her fist towards Mun Ranyang's chest. Quack. Mun Ranyang reflexively leaned back. At that moment, Becky moved in to kick the woman's left ribs. Pack. Becky frowned. He always managed to keep up with Mun Ranyang, so he thought he had a chance against this woman, but his foot was hurt rather than the woman's legs. Why am I feeling this? Kicking the woman's ribs felt like kicking a pillar made of some kind of steel with his bare feet. You broke my leg? The third guest changed her path and decided to really break Becky's leg, as it was still in the vicinity of her ribs, but Becky managed to react instantly. Quang. Her clenched fist had gone through the floor because Becky was able to pull out his leg at the last second. However, the moment her fist reached the ground, a crater was left in the ground. The third guest indeed held immense power. What kind of power is that? There was no trace of any martial arts or internal energy from the woman. In fact, it seemed like her power didn't come from internal energy but rather pure muscle strength, but it was hard to believe because her body didn't show any noticeable muscle mass. Fat. Becky quickly extended his leg once more towards her chest and face, kicking 8 times in succession. Pop-pop-pack. She isn't even moving? Becky couldn't hide his shock when his leg began to bleed with each kick, while her body didn't seem to be bothered by his relatively powerful attack. Hap. Whoa. Because the space was very enclosed, Becky couldn't exert much force and thus decided to change his tactics. He decided to wrap his feet and cover his leg with invisible energy. Pop-pop-pack. The woman's body was now being pushed back by the kicks that had their power amplified, but Becky wasn't satisfied yet. She could handle this too? It didn't make any sense. Just who was this woman? You bastard. The woman was enraged at Becky for making her feel pain, so she tried to move when someone grabbed her body. That's enough. It was Chun Yo-won. HM? Chun Yo-won, who held her, narrowed his eyes. He tried to seal her blood points right away, but that didn't seem to work. He then realized. No blood points? Humans should have blood points in the same spots in their bodies, but the woman's body didn't seem to have any. He was further confused when the woman said. Definitely different from what I heard. C shouted. If we don't catch him, this sector is at risk, third guest. I thought I wouldn't have to deal with him, but I guess I can't run from this ordeal. As soon as she said that, something amazing happened. A yellow light began to glow from her eyes right before a beam was shot from them. Swoosh! Chun Yo-won, who was hit point blank, bounced back and flew through the wall. Kwak kwak kwang. Lord! Becky and Man Ranyong shouted out of their concern for him. In the midst of the chaos, C grabbed a towel, wrapped her body with it, and put on her mask. I'm glad Elena showed up. She fully trusted Elena, which was the true name of the third guest. Although she was called as a guest, she was a superhuman within MS group. In other words, she transcended other human beings. Strictly speaking, there is nothing human about her. Of course, she had come out of the gate. Since she had come out alone from the gate, she would technically be labeled as a special entity. Unlike the other 3 guests, she couldn't leave this place because she made a contract, but this was actually beneficial for MS. Fat. Elena ran towards Chun Yo-won with the rage of a frenzied rhinoceros, seeming like she wanted to crush his body. Kwak kwak kwang. Pack. As she dashed to kill him, Chun Yo-won stopped her while she was still moving. Elena, who looked at Chun Yo-won holding her, was shocked. You seem strong. Only a few people had even been strong enough to stop her, but Chun Yo-won didn't even seem to have trouble doing so. Then try this. Since her hand was being restrained, Elena used her leg to kick Chun Yo-won's neck. Puck. Her expression hardened. Although she definitely hit his neck, she was surprised when the neck didn't break and when Chun Yo-won didn't even try to move. Are you done? Are you human? When it came to pure physical strength, Elena was considered a monster. However, after undergoing 5 bodily reconstructions, Chun Yo-won had already surpassed the limits of the human body and was now at the Void Master level, meaning that his internal energy surpassed that of the spirit beasts. Elena smiled and said, Interesting. This is my first time seeing a human like you. She's definitely not a human. Hearing her words, Chun Yo-won knew that she wasn't human. Her lack of blood points tipped him off, but he still looked for solid proof. Well, it doesn't matter. After all, he had seen so many non-humans that he developed a tolerance for them and didn't show any surprise anymore. Elena looked at him with excitement. Great. In this era, you, an Earthling, and I, who have lived in a place with a gravitational strength 100 times that of Earth, shall compete to see who is the strongest of Kwang. Before she could finish speaking, Chen Yuan smashed her head with his fist. Her neck was bent to the side by the fist that was infused with the unification of energy, causing her to collapse to the floor. Even though her neck was bent, she still spoke. "I was talking to you, coward." Chen Yuan quickly closed the gap. "Right, you talk a lot." While she was on her knees trying to get up, he used his knee to hit her in the stomach. Kwang. Ack. She normally didn't feel pain from any physical blows, but this one was different. The unification of energy that focused all of the focused energy on one part of the body made her feel intense pain despite her strong body. Eik. She was angry that Chen Yuan wasn't giving her a chance to move, deciding to shoot another light beam from her eyes. Swash. However, the space between them where the beam should have traveled suddenly distorted when a black hole seemed to appear and suck in the yellow beam. What was that? Did you think the same trick would work again? As soon as he said that, Chen Yuan raised his fist again and slammed it into her stomach. Bang! Ack! As a crater in the floor formed from the force, the two fell down again. While she was falling, the woman tried to move away from Chen Yuan. Pack! Before she could go anywhere, Chen Yuan quickly grabbed by her neck. Where are you going? Let me go. Even though Chen Yuan was falling as well, he was able to slap her in the face once again. However, her superhuman body allowed her to remain unharmed despite the force he had exerted. Lee. Her mouth was mangled by the slap, slurring her pronunciation. A normal human would have died from the impact, but this woman definitely wasn't a human. In fact, her face turned back to normal right after, and she didn't show any signs of pain. You bastard! I will kill you. Elena's face, which was back to normal, spoke normally. Chen Yuan responded. You're interesting. How much force should I use for you to feel a pain so unbearable you'll be asking for death? Hearing those words, her eyes shuddered. Kwang. Kwang. Kwak Kwang. The sounds of roaring created the atmosphere of an intense war. The vibrations were so strong that the tiles in the room were falling off. C, who felt the immense power, spoke to Chen Yuan's subordinates with a firm voice. Hear that sound? If you stop this now and surrender, I can guarantee your lives. In response, Hu Bong pointed his sword at her neck. What bullshit! Becky snarled in a low voice. She wanted to run away while they were occupied with the fight happening below, but she couldn't move because these three were too fast. This sector is my base and pride. It would be better to let go of the delusion that you can get out of here alive. Can't you hear the sounds of their fight slowing down? As she said, the sounds of battling from below were slowing down, to which she smiled and continued. You must realize that the existence of Chen Ma that you believe so much is nothing more than a human when compared to the group with hidden power. Thud. Something appeared in front of her. C, who looked at what suddenly appeared, went stiff. It was Elena, the third guest, whose face was a mess and whose arms and legs were both cut down, making her form hard to recognize. What is T? Seeing her flustered reaction, Hu Bong smiled. It seems you're the one who doesn't understand. Hee hee,